So we've been watching developments in Libya where French fighter jets have fired on a Libyan military vehicle.
Let's bring in CNN contributor General Wesley Clark. He's a former NATO Supreme Allied Commander joining us from Little Rock, Arkansas. All right, so we're seeing the French clearly take the lead. There are various reports about how many times they've fired, whether or not they've taken out tanks, other types of military vehicles. What should we be, what is your observation on the first initial sort of period there as this enforcement of the no-fly zone operation commences?
Well, I'm encouraged that the French got the aircraft up, and the reports are they took out the tanks, and that's encouraging, and hopefully they're all tanks that were manned and operated by Gaddafi's people, and that it was taken out without causing collateral damage. But the real question is now, what's the impact of this on further actions by Gaddafi and his team? Do they then fall back and say, the international community, hey, they really mean it, let's stop? Or do they say, hurry up, push through, doesn't matter, lose a few tank crews, doesn't matter, get this job done before they can do anything else? So that's probably the calculation going on tonight, right now, inside Libyan headquarters. So in order to block that calculation, you've got to be sure, if you're the coalition enforcing this, that you've got adequate force, that this wasn't a one-time tap, no bombing pause. This is continuous application of force until Gaddafi breaks.
So
and you have to do this to maintain the protection of the people there.
So, General, let me ask you this, because we've got this confirmation now. CNN is able to confirm now that the U.S. has actually launched its first missiles against Libya. If that is indeed the case, following the kind of military activity we've been talking about involving the French, what does this tell you about the operation and the direction in which it's going?
Sounds to me like it's moving toward escalation. And that's important because in an operation like this, once you're engaged, you have to achieve escalation dominance. If you don't achieve escalation dominance, you give your adversary the hope that he can ride it out and trump you and win. And so the escalation dominance is the key factor, and a U.S. missile, the addition of U.S. missile combat power adds to that sense that Gaddafi's people will have of overwhelming force applied by the coalition.
And what targets are they taking out? We know the French fighter jets went for military vehicles, tanks. According to many reports, there were more than 4 strikes. What about an American, say, Tomahawk missile? What is that seeking out?
Have to go against a fixed installation. They're not going to be able to effectively target from sea-launched cruise missiles like that, a mobile force. So going after either radar sites or command and control bunkers or maybe an artillery dump or maybe fuel storage points for Gaddafi's forces. My guess is they'll run it right up the ladder toward the chain of command and start taking out the regional command and control centers, probably starting with a regional air defense command and control center.
General Wesley Clark, thanks very much.
Let's get back to General Wesley Clark, who's joining us again. He was listening to all that Chris had to say. He's joining us again from Little Rock, Arkansas.
All right, so you heard there what was said. Phase 1, degrade air defenses. That phase seems to be underway. What would phase 2 be then, as far as the U.S. military is concerned?
Strike forces on the ground, plus work it up toward the command and control centers, controlling those forces, and go as high as the Libyan High Command, wherever that is.
All right, and what would that entail, going as high as the Libyan High Command?
That would entail probably a great deal of danger for Mr. Gaddafi if he's anywhere near it. And so we would expect to take out the command and control for those forces. Now, if there's a regional command and control center, maybe you'd strike that first if you could isolate, and we probably know this, who is controlling the forces that are moving toward Benghazi. Maybe as a warning, we run that up first. It's clear that given the way that the UN Security Council resolution was written and Secretary Clinton's comments, that this is an effort, and President Sarkozy's, this is an effort to keep the door open and give Gaddafi a chance to back out rather than calling for his unconditional surrender. But he's only got limited time to respond to this. I think the patience of the coalition is going to be limited. As President Obama said, this wasn't intended to be a long-scale, drawn-out operation. And we've got people on the ground who are at risk. And so I think patience in the coalition will be limited for Gaddafi and his stalling tactics. So First thing is degrade the air defense, blunt his ability to conduct offensive operations, and run the pressure up the command and control chain until he breaks, but maintain escalation dominance on this.
And when you mentioned, people on the ground at risk, you are also talking about intel, right? That intel support in order to know where these targets would be, I guess, most suitable for U.S. missiles as well as for the French air
That's
assault.
right. Well, I'm sure that we're talking to people on the ground. The question is whether the people on the ground really know what's happening. When I hear news commentators, of course, the news commentators can only get so far forward in the fighting. But it's also true that the Libyan opposition is, so far as we can determine, not really an organized force capable of doing deep reconnaissance. Maybe they got people behind the lines that can call in on cell phones or something. I hope they do. But a lot of the intelligence has to be done through overhead collection, electronic intercepts, and other things. And maybe there have been some teams that are inserted. And maybe there are some people inside Gaddafi's own camp who are disloyal. All those things are possible, and I'm sure that the coalition leadership will exploit every single opportunity as it moves down this line. But the key concept to keep in mind is escalation dominance.
All right. General Wesley Clark, thanks so much. Appreciate that. I know we'll be checking back with you throughout the afternoon. It certainly seems like a very quick